Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 43. I'm Jill Savage. Well, tonight on the agenda, it's another week in the golden age, so let's dive in. Earlier today, President Trump convened a meeting of his cabinet and Elon Musk. Trump's dream team each gave an update of how they're both delivering the mandate while cutting costs for taxpayers. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that participants in government fraud will be persecuted by the DOJ.
We are hearing a lot about fraud, waste, and abuse, a lot of waste and abuse, but there is a tremendous amount of fraud. And Elon, thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your team. You have uncovered so much fraud in our government, and we will prosecute you. We have an internal task force now working with every agency sitting here at this table. And if you've committed fraud, we're coming after you.
Second Lady Usha Vance is set to travel to Greenland this Thursday. In response, Greenland's prime minister warned of American aggression and said that her visit will cause a mess. Vice President J.D. Vance recently explained on Fox News that the United States should buy Greenland because its current owner isn't holding up its security interests.
Denmark, which controls Greenland, it's not doing its job and it's not being a good ally. So you have to ask yourself, how are we going to solve that problem, solve our own national security? If that means that we need to take more territorial interest in Greenland, that is what President Trump is going to do, because he doesn't care about what the Europeans scream at us. He cares about putting the interests of America's citizens first.
The economic Trump effect is raging on. The United Arab Emirates committed $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years to increase existing investment in artificial intelligence, infrastructure, semiconductors, energy, and manufacturing in the United States. And the British engineering giant Rolls-Royce is planning to shift its production to the United States to avoid Trump's tariffs. The situation at the border continues to improve under Trump as illegal immigration numbers plunge to a 25-year low. Watch this.
Preliminary figures for February 2025 show a plunge in illegal immigrant crossings to levels not seen in 25 years, with Border Patrol apprehending just under 8,500 people during the month. For comparison, during some months of the Biden administration, 8,500 were being apprehended on a given day.
On Truth Social, Trump announced the United States will place a secondary tariff on Venezuela for, quote, purposefully and deceitfully sending to the United States tens of thousands of high-level undercover criminals, such as members of de Aragua. And any country that purchases oil and or gas from Venezuela will have to pay a tariff of 25% to the United States. Trump reportedly promised to pardon Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer, saying that he was screwed by the Bidens. Archer and two other executives were found guilty of securities fraud, while Hunter Biden was unpunished. Over the weekend, Trump received a warm welcome at the NCAA Wrestling Championships. College wrestler Wyatt Hendrickson, who's also a second lieutenant in the Air Force, saluted President Trump as he entered. Watch.
Shut up! Shut up! Everybody shut up! Shut up, Brock!
I'm glad that he was the last match.
I'm glad he was the last match, too. That was a good feel-good moment from over the weekend. Now let's bring in Blaze News editor-in-chief, Matthew Peterson. So let's go back to Greenland, right? This whole situation. Is Trump actually going to buy Greenland?
I mean, why not? This is the era of just doing things. And there has been a serious, thought put into this for a long time, a serious talk about it for a long time. So it's not something to scoff at. It's not something to laugh at. The United States throughout its history has done this a bunch of times. We have purchased land. We've acquired land in different ways from various countries. I mean, Alaska was something that we bought for pennies on the dollar. So it makes a lot of sense to expand up there. The administration's been making that case for a while. And really, when you see Trump in moments like that, giving a hug to that guy, maybe they'll just give it to him at the end of the day.
They might. I mean, Hunter Biden was just given a pardon, but his business partner was not. So now Donald Trump is going out there and saying, oh, well, maybe, if you got screwed by the Biden, is this like the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, like everyone else, there's a plan there. And there is a lot of unfinished business when it comes to the Biden family and the crimes that they committed. It really is unconscionable that we live in a country where everyone's just fine with the fact that the president's family was taking millions of dollars from foreign countries while he was in office. This was a disgrace. So I believe this is part of a larger plan, let's say.
And all the time we're talking about the tariffs, and then it goes through. And yet now this is going to be another country that is investing in the United States, $1.4 trillion from the UAE that's going to be coming into the United States. Donald Trump, you can say whatever you want to say about him, but if you're on the left, you have to look at this and say there is a ton of money that is now flowing into the United States because of what President Trump has done.
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect of political leadership that actually I rail on about at the local level. If you're mayor of a city, for instance, you can be on the phone with big time developers, encouraging them to come and actually have a vision for your community. This is a real important job of political leaders. You used to see it when the governor of Texas used to go out to California, fly out there and just tell business leaders, please move here, and make a case for it. Trump is doing that for the entire nation, and he's focusing on things that are going to be really important to increase American jobs. So this is, again, a sign of someone with the political will to do the job and actually help everyone out there.
Well, we focus on the right a lot here. Chris Bedford will come up, though. He'll focus on the left because he's going to explain the Democratic Party's strange shift in messaging coming up. Let's talk about Good Ranchers, because since 2017, over 140,000 family farms have shut down. And why is that? Well, because a lot of the meat in the grocery store isn't coming from American farms anymore. It's imported from overseas because mass production and low costs take priority over quality. But this spring, we need to change that. It's time to spring into action and put American farms first, because nothing beats American quality. And that's why I choose GoodRanchers.com, because they stand for integrity, tradition, and 100% American-raised meat. And all products on GoodRanchers.com have trustworthy ingredients. Their meat is born, raised, and harvested right here in the United States, so you know exactly where it comes from. It doesn't have any of those hidden additives. There are no antibiotics, there are no hormones, there are no seed oils. It's just one simple ingredient that you can read, and that's the meat. Good Ranchers delivers straight to your door, offering you that true farm-to-table transparency. So you're supporting American ranchers and getting meat that you can feel good about serving. It's clean, simple, exactly the way it should be, and you can skip the grocery store. Right now, Good Ranchers is running their Spring into Action promotion. So when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you get to decide if you want free chicken nuggets, bacon, ground beef, or salmon in every order for a year. Just be sure to use my code Jill at checkout and get $40 off your first order. It's the best deal that they've ever done. So spring into action and help American farmers with every purchase. Visit GoodRanchers.com now. Use code Jill to get free meat for a year and $40 off. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. The Democratic Party used to oppose Trump's agenda with passionate and destructive marches and riots, but in his second term, that's all changed. The Democratic Party now clings to processes and legal strategies to combat Trump. Now, here to explain this shift is our Chris Bedford, because he wrote about this in his latest Beltway brief. So, Bedford, I know right now, our Julio Rosas is just waiting for a riot. He used to have them all the time. He was spoiled. But now we get this boring process and legal strategy. What's going on?
I know, it's completely changed. We were just talking about a trip he wants to take to Washington, D.C. He promises this one is going to be the big one. So we're going to come here and bring him. But it has been, I had to point out to him, years since really the destructive street violence that we saw under the first Trump presidency. It's starting to look a lot more like it used to look, which is large protests maybe, and a couple of punk rockers who think that they're on the front lines of World War II, and they want to run out there and actually cause a riot, but they're outnumbered and they never really get anywhere. Now, we saw that especially at the RNC, for example, and we saw it at the DNC. Democrats, you'll notice, weren't fighting on the issues that they were once so self-righteous about. I mean, the left has been on the march since President Barack Obama was first elected, and that steady march turned into a charge, a sprint at the enemy once Donald Trump actually came into office. And for these last particularly 5 years, where you me, Matt, everyone who's watching, we lived through what was basically a moral panic, a moral crusade, where to post something on your Facebook page a few years ago saying, I support the police, could get you fired from a corporate job in Texas. The level of insanity we were put through, and it was all about the substance. You couldn't attack on anything. You couldn't push back, or you were a bigot. You're on the wrong side of history. You don't hear that anymore. I think a perfect example of this was Donald Trump's back and forth with the governor of Maine, this ugly little midget woman who they tried to make into a liberal hero. It doesn't really actually work at all. She's since folded. But if you look at the back and forth between them in the White House, she doesn't say, no, but men should be allowed to dominate women's sports. We stand with transgender youth. You're trying to kill people. If you disagree with this, you're trying to erase them and genocide them, like the activists have been saying for years. She just says, well, we'll see you in court. We're gonna fight you, and we're gonna follow what the law says. Maine's gonna follow what the law says. It's an interesting illumination. And you see it too with Chuck Schumer, who is the first person to really fight for this and suggest it in the national level as to fight on process versus actually the cause. He's also the first Democrat who's not really a major potential presidential candidate. So they felt very comfortable going after him viciously in a way that they haven't been able to go, really willing to go after Shapiro or Fetterman or Newsom. He's kind of taken a lot more bullets than they have for this fight. And that doesn't mean that this is a bad tactic. This is generally much more effective than street theater, to tie things up in courts, to argue where over the airspace you were when you got the order that the gangbangers from another country have a legal right to be here, according to some judge, or who has jurisdiction, how many miles does it go, was the order written down, was the order spoken. That's what they're fighting on now, and it's more effective at actually holding things up, but it lacks all of the spirit that we've seen over the last couple of years. That's just become a husk of itself.
So, Chris, let's talk about the cause of this shift, because it's marked, it's interesting. Certainly, the fire is gone, and it's almost as if every rally is actually a good thing for the right because you see it, you can mock it. It reminds me, not that I'm pro-Iraq war in retrospect, sadly, with many other people, but it reminds me of like the old people who used to be outside the college, when I was in grad school, would be protesting the war every day. It's like every day at the same time, some old people come out of the old folks' homes and, they'd have their signs. It's disintegrating back into that. But why has this changed in your view?
I think one of the main reasons is the extreme unpopularity of a lot of their views. I mean, men and women's sports is an issue where Democrats agree with the president on this. Independents agree with the president on this. Republicans overwhelmingly agree with the president on this. That moral crusade tired itself out. They tried initially to link every aspect of it to civil rights, and anyone who stood against it was either a Nazi or a slaver or a segregationist. Those are the types of people you're constantly compared to, just for saying maybe I stand with the police, or just for saying I don't want mentally ill adult men in my little girl's bathroom. The American people have turned on that. It's no longer a popular battle that they want to fight. So they're not ramparts and banners that they're defensible anymore. So this progressivism. So let's say you're AOC, it's got to be very shocking to you. You grow up, you go to Boston University, you travel the country going to these well-funded left-wing protests like Standing Rock, where all that fire and all that terror ended up unfolding. They just won a major lawsuit against Greenpeace over that protest. And then you run for Congress at the time of a left-wing upheaval, essentially. So you've never really had your viewpoints questioned. You've been on the winning side this entire time. No one's substantively pushed back against you. Even Nancy Pelosi was afraid of the power that you wielded and tried to bring you to heel. So she assumed that everyone disagreed with her because the pews were filled on Sundays for left-wing psychotic church. Now it turns out when that's not popular, when it's a political liability, she's finding out that there are much fewer actual true progressives than they thought. There were a lot of fellow travelers, a lot of people who are willing to use those ideas to gain power. People are willing to put their pronouns in every flag in the book that you've never even heard of, in their Twitter bios, in front of their homes, and all these signs when it's popular. But when it actually requires sacrifice, when you actually have to stand up against the American people on these issues, well, the ranks are a lot fewer.
Well, Bedford, I look at D.C. We know it's a swamp. We know there's corruption. We know all that stuff is still going on. But I mean, we haven't gotten an update about what it's like in D.C. from you for quite some time. We have no idea what the traffic patterns are doing anymore. What's it like, though, right now? I mean, because in all seriousness, in regards to this conversation, things are significantly different right now in Washington, D.C. than they were the last time Trump was in office.
Yeah, I mean, especially since the last time where the only people you would ever see supporting any kind of, with any signs of support for the president were the folks who were tourists. You'd see tourists come in from school trips. Maybe you'd see a red MAGA hat and a junior high kid or one of those red fishing MAGA hats. That's essentially it. They were scorned. There were flags everywhere of different protests, different kinds of gay flags. Most houses seemed to have a sign in front of them. So they had their version of the Nicene Creed, but it was for left-wing causes. In this house, we believe. You don't see that anymore. There are restaurants and bars that are popping up that cater to people specifically who are Republican. There's a normalization of it. It kind of feels like a step back from the brinksmanship. There are reporters, once again, speaking to each other. There was a couple of years there where, for example, the Daily Caller, we used to host people from the Daily Beast for beer pong back in the day at our offices. The people would come over from the Huffington Post. We had friends over at BuzzFeed. You'd visit each other's offices. You knew each other. Sometimes you'd have lunch. You disagreed, but you were all humans, essentially. That all went away after November 2016, and it was gone for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And that all those barriers have started to fall down. People are looking around, maybe a little embarrassed. Maybe they're just trying to memory hold the whole thing we went through with COVID and the race riots in the country. Just trying to put it all behind us, but there's a sense of normalcy. You used to have to go to Northern Virginia to find people who would openly agree with you, but now it's all over.
Well, the Democrats, sometimes they're still going to go out there and just play the hits, because we know Chuck Schumer is out there saying that democracy is at risk because Donald Trump is deporting gang members. Let's watch it.
Do you agree, is the United States in a constitutional crisis?
Yes, I do, Kristen, and democracy is at risk. Look, Donald Trump is a lawless, angry man. He thinks he should be king. He thinks he should do whatever he wants, regardless of the law. And he thinks judges should just listen to him. Now, we have to fight that back in every single way.
I love that he said that when they broke the law. Well, hold on. Illegals are illegal. They broke the law getting into the country, so why do we care about how we're going to send them back out of the country, Bedford?
Because he cares about a primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Earlier this last week, he was saying that we are not in a constitutional crisis. He wasn't ready to say that yet. What's changed? Except for the fact that he's been under attack. There have been a lot of people in that progressive group who have been pushing AOC to run against him. He's looking at his age, looking at the unpopularity of his last couple of weeks with the Democratic faithful, where he had to go on places like The View and say, I'm good at my job and I would like to keep my job. He didn't expect that, but he's not actually the leader for this moment. And here's the thing about the progressives that the other Democrats don't really are going to have a difficult time with. Even though they are fewer than they thought they were, they're vicious. They are completely and totally committed. They will do friendly fire in a way that you wouldn't expect other members of the Democratic Party to do. So if they come at him and they make a concerted effort, he's got to be sitting there wondering, who's the hardcore Chuck Schumer constituency? Who's out there with we need Chuck Schumer right now sign? Who's wearing a Chuck Schumer t-shirts and flying his flag? There aren't a lot of people, whereas someone like AOC has that group. She needs to say dumb things like you break the law to get rid of people who are here illegally. And that's something that hopefully he's thinking will stave off any kind of a real challenge.
I don't know about you, but I mean, when I hear him revert to this, I have to stifle a yawn. I mean, I know I'm a little tired today, but it's like, look, it makes you yawn, because what you hear him doing is going right back into the tropes. When he was saying we're not in a crisis, you notice, right? It's interesting. It's interesting when Democrats talk that way and say, oh, actually, this is a problem. And they might be full of crap and just, riding the tide, but that's fine. I mean, you take notice. When he goes into this, it's almost like going into a mantra. No, I mean, it feels to me like this is the kind of thing people see people going back to it, and they're going to have a negative reaction as a whole. So they better stay vicious, because I don't see how this is going to work.
don't think it's actually fooling people either. I think he's overplayed his hand here. I think what he did on the shutdown fight was the right move, probably, but I was shocked at how quickly he did it. Usually, Republicans do this all the time. They pretend to their base that they're putting up a fight. They exhaust all the options. They do brinksmanship. Maybe they even have a shutdown that lasts for 24 hours or 48 hours. And then they pull back and let some of their vulnerable members vote alongside with Republicans to move the vote forward, just to get through the cloture process, the weird 60-vote threshold. And then in the actual vote, they pull back all those Democrats once again, and they make Republicans pass it on their own. That would have been the kind of play that someone who's used to being in opposition would have made. Instead, I guess he was accidentally honest and said, we're not going to win this. We're just going to pull back. We're going to let the Republicans steamroll this. And I don't think he realized just how much pent-up anger there was in his base that no one was really willing to do anything at that moment. I mean, it was frustrating anger. It's like the anger that I have when I throw a DVD player across the room because I can't get it to work. It's not going to fix anything, but it makes me feel better in the moment. That seems to be what Democrats are feeling at this moment. I know that Jill's shaking my head, like, who still watches DVDs?
That's literally going to say about? The kids are going, we don't even use DVD players anymore, Bedford. You're
Dad,
so
what's a DVD
old
player
now. No, but like...
I'm like Joe Biden with this record player.
Yes, well, that's even better. But who do the Democrats have on the bench? Because we talked, it was a week or two ago that they were saying AOC got the most percentages of who they thought was going to be like the de facto leader of the Democratic Party. Who do you look for? And it's AOC, right? Who else is even on their bench right now?
That's exactly it, because she's the one who's out there fighting. Gavin Newsom's out there pretending he didn't even say the words that he said. There's a really funny super clip online of him saying, well, I don't know, that's Latinx. This didn't come from me or anyone on my team. And then they played it with him saying that word over and over and over again at different press conferences. He's out there hanging out with Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, trying to pretend that he's cool. In fact, we should invite him on here to see if he wants to talk with us. Josh Shapiro is someone who has masqueraded as a more moderate Democrat. I think a lot of his views and the way he got to power show extreme anti-Catholic bias, a willingness to be vicious himself, but he portrays that way and he talks that way. And of course, there's the interesting dark horse of the guy in the hoodie who you bumped into last time you were in D.C., John Fetterman. He's someone who I think a lot of Republicans actually kind of nod along and agree with. He breaks with liberal orthodoxy in different places. He so far has not taken a single hard vote against his party, but he will voice opposition to different things. He shells at the protesters, tells them to shut up. He's someone who's a potential future candidate.
John Fetterman in the hoodie at the coffee shop. And he didn't even change. That was the best part when he went in for the inauguration. Didn't even care that he was just wearing a hoodie and shorts. Bedford, well, we will make the ask out there for Gavin Newsom because you know what? We want him to come on the show. Why not?
Yeah. He's an interesting guy these days.
I would love to interview him and have him on.
All right, Bedford, we'll catch you back here tomorrow. I know that we talked a lot about the Democrats today, so we'll get back to the Republicans tomorrow.
See you then.
Erika Donalds will highlight what the Trump administration has already done for education when we get back. All right, it's a pretty big day around here because we have Frontier by Blaze Media, and it's issue number 2 as the lovely Mr. Vanna White here, Matthew Peterson, has, look at that cover. I mean, everybody, every man that looks at that cover is like, this is as America as it gets. This is based as it gets right now.
I love the back, too. Magazines, the original Do Not Disturb mode.
Yes.
Perfect.
So if you missed out on the first one and you want to get in right now, this is your chance because it's not just a magazine. It's a movement for the people who want the real stories that cut through the noise. But you can't just buy it in stores. The only way that you can actually get Frontier is through Blaze Unlimited. And that also gets you VIP access, exclusive content, and you know, right, you're going to get that direct line straight to us here at Blaze Media. So if you could act fast. I love that you're still being Vanna White here.
I'm just holding it up.
You can get the first 500 subscribers, get issues 1 and 2, plus $40 off when you use code BLAZE500. Go to blazeunlimited.com/BNT. It's not just about reading Frontier. It's about living it. So don't wait. Go get it now before it's too late. I can't get over you just taking a look through that beautiful magazine. It's so beautiful. It's Frontier.
Beautiful magazine.
It's episode 2, magazine 2, out now. Go get it. Don't wait. The Trump administration has racked up the wins for American education by returning education to the states, prioritizing parents over bureaucrats, and protecting resources for children with disabilities. Erika Donalds is the chair of the America First Policy Institute Center for Education Opportunity. So, Erika, thanks so much for joining us here tonight. So, one of these, the wins that you've seen from the Trump administration, what stands out to you right now?
Well, the biggest win, what Republicans have been looking for the past 45 years, literally, is this executive order and Trump making good on his promise to the American people that he's going to shut down the Department of Education. Confirmation of Linda McMahon, who I think is an excellent choice for the last Secretary of Education, which actually just happened on March 3rd. And since then, a reduction in force of half of the department's workforce, including 6 strategic communications departments, which is going to cut down on the bureaucracy that is sucking up resources from the money actually getting to the benefit of students in our country, which Secretary McMahon has repeatedly said she wants to continue, but without all the red tape.
Yeah, you talked about this on X as well. Let's go ahead and listen to some of that. While you say the Department of Education getting rid of this is good for America. Here's that clip.
Decisions for their children. Now, without a federal Department of Education, hopefully with the help of Congress, will continue to put more power in the hands of parents, in the hands of states and local communities, and fulfill the president's vision of making education great again.
So with this in mind, right, getting the Department of Education out of the way, getting everything back in the states, what is going to be the biggest priority then that people need to be focusing on after this?
Well, I believe the biggest priority is to hold our states and local authorities accountable for the performance of the students in our districts. What's happening now is there's a lot of blame going around. They can say that these federal mandates are tying them down and not allowing them to teach students. Well, that's not going to be any longer. They're going to have as much or more funding than they had before, but now they're going to have full accountability for making sure that low-income students are getting additional services that they need to overcome some of the challenges that they may have in their communities and their households, and that students with disabilities, the funding that the federal government has allocated to them, is giving them the additional services that they require in order to learn and to thrive. But who's going to be accountable for that? Not the federal government, but your local school boards and your state reps and your state legislators, and parents and community members are going to now be able to hold those people accountable for performance.
Amen to that. Erika, game that out for us a little bit. I mean, that it's an enormous shift, and it's a welcome one that I assume from what you're saying, you think will give a boost, right, to all these efforts to take power back in states and local communities. But of course, some powerful interests are going to oppose that and have for a very long time. Teachers unions and an entire colossus of really government is going to be against this. So how do you see this rolling out in the next few years?
Well, remember also that the president put out an executive order regarding school choice prior to the executive order to shut down the department. We're going to also see some guidance from the Department of Education in the coming weeks on how some of these federal funds can also be used to enhance school choice. Now, we know that in states, blue states, perhaps that are more controlled by teachers unions, they're going to continue to use that on bureaucracy, more union members, more administrative bloat, non-teaching positions as they have done for decades. But in red states, in states that have embraced school choice, parents are going to have more options and more funding to go along with it when this directive come down from the Department of Education. What I believe we're going to start to see, and you're talking about a shift, is migration for school choice. Think about Florida, where if you have 3 children, you could get $9,000 per child to send them to a private school, whereas just above the border in Georgia, you get $0 to help with private school. If I live near the border in Georgia, I'm going to Florida to make sure that my kids can get a better education. And you're going to see that competition continue to take place, especially as states like Texas and Tennessee and Arizona have all expanded to universal choice.
Well, with that being said, with the money, right? Because there are so many people that go through and say, oh, we give so much money to the education system, and yet none of the kids are getting smarter decade after decade. So how do you go through and make sure that the money is actually going where it needs to go and that the kids over time are actually improving and they're going to be smarter than we were when we went through the school system?
I strongly believe we need a free market and competition in the education space. We have not had that for a century now. It's been a monopolistic situation, and we know what monopolies do. They take away quality, access, and transparency. But a free market actually brings those things back in: innovation, access, quality, resourcefulness, right? Things that parents are going to be looking for. And when parents have the ability to vote with their feet, we are going to see the competition amongst schools and amongst different academic and education programs of who is going to be the best. Not only that, we often think that government has to force schools to tell us how they're performing, and that is the case in a monopoly environment. But when schools are competing with one another, they're going to put forth their performance, if it's good, to try to attract more students and more parents to come their way. So we are going to see a complete transformation in the education system in places like Florida, Arizona, and others that have school choice, where the free market is really going to take hold. And that quality is going to increase because of that competition.
Well, let's shift our focus to the courts now, because we know that the Supreme Court is taking up a big case out of Oklahoma. They're looking at whether a Catholic charter school can get state funding, and the state's AG is trying to block it, saying that it would open the door to taxpayer funding schools teaching something like Sharia law. So does this argument actually hold any water? What do you make of what's going on there in Oklahoma?
Well, this case assumes that there is such thing as a non-sectarian school. I don't believe that there is. We see that public schools now are teaching indoctrination of woke ideology. They have their own set of beliefs and value systems that perhaps is not considered a religion. Nevertheless, it is a value system that is contrary to many Americans' religious beliefs. Therefore, it is not neutral. So the case assumes that there is a neutrality in public school systems when there is not. It discriminates against religious schools not being able to operate as charter schools, which are not divisions of the state. I have started charter schools myself, and I've been a school board member. Charter schools are private entities running a school that have a contract with a district or a state in order to receive state dollars. Parents are making independent decisions to send their child to that school based on their own religious beliefs, and they should not be discriminated against. I believe we're going to win this case. It's unfortunate that's being brought against a Republican in Oklahoma who should be defending people's religious liberties and parents' ability to select a school that works best for their family.
I love how you say that. There's no such thing as neutrality. You have to teach from a value system anyway. It's exactly right. It's all this, there's this fake framework that hopefully is going to be torn down by the good work that you and others are doing. But I want to talk about the future and a concern that I know is on a lot of audience members' minds. Which is, it's almost like Republicans can't take a win, right? I mean, for good reason. They're used to losing so hard with such poor leadership before. They've been sold a bill of goods many times. So there are a lot of people who will say in the comments, this is great, the executive order is great, but will this really get rid of the Department of Education? Don't we need legislation? And there's real concern there moving forward.
There is, but let's remember, Congress actually allowed cloture in the Senate with 60 votes, including Democrats, on the Republican spending bill just a little while ago. In every single Congress, there have not been 60 votes on either side, and yet bills get to the floor. So there has always been negotiation between parties, whether whoever's in control, Republicans or Democrats, to get a bill to the floor to allow that party to vote on their agenda. And so, yes, you need Democrats to allow this to go to the floor, but you don't need them to vote for it. And that's usually what happens. You'll have some Democrats that'll swing the Republicans' way and vice versa to allow a bill to go to the floor. And then you pass it with 51 votes of your controlling party. I expect that's what's going to happen to end the Department of Education for good. I expect fully that President Trump is going to be able to keep his promise to the American people, because he's determined to do so. And there's going to have to be some negotiation on the part of the senators in Congress to make sure that it does get to the floor and get a vote, as has happened numerous times in the past. But as we've also talked about, there's a lot that can be done at the executive level, where things are being moved off to other departments through contracts, which is a purview of the president. And he's, of course, instructed the department to do that.
Erika Donalds, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you talking about this important issue.
Of course. And MP, when we look at this, I mean, like she said at the top, this is one of the most important things. Everybody on the right has been looking for the Department of Education for about 40 years to be dismantled. And we finally get it. And there are actually even more wins that could be had here when we actually look at what's in front of us.
Yeah, so you do have to step back every once in a while and realize we're just getting spoiled. We're getting used to this. And it shouldn't be considered rote. This is momentous. No one else had the guts to do what Trump just did. And as she alluded to, it's more than just an executive order. Tying federal funding to states going with school choice, that's a powerful, powerful combination. And so this is, again, it's a plan. This isn't reckless, as the other side saying. This is a plan to break up the Department of Ed, put some pieces here and here that we want to keep in other agencies, and then, for the most part, send this money to the states and convince them, basically bribe them in a good way. If you want to get this money, right, you need to support school choice. Here's some guidelines. Why don't you pay attention to them? And I think the overarching effect, eventually everyone's going to take the money. It's like gravity, right? Over time, it's going to win. And so in this case, I think it was wisely done. It's not just about writing on a sheet of paper.
What I like about what the Republicans are doing, which is a very unusual sentence to say, right? Oh my gosh, they're doing something good. I look at it and I say, okay, they're actually going through and implementing things that are very common sense.
Yes.
That are actually going to be hard for the left to come through and undo. It's not just, hey, we're going to do this with an executive order. I hope that they follow through and actually get this done, because they're doing this in not only the realm of education, but in so many different areas right now where you're thinking they might actually have some lasting change on the right and push the country forward in a way that it actually needs to be pushed.
Yeah, and this is the importance of the issue. It's important to every parent, because you're thinking about, where will my child go and be educated. It's also important to the entire fate of the nation. I mean, those 3 years I spent, evaluating history and civics programs throughout the country, you just saw years ago how bad it was. And it's terrible. In many of these states, it is a wasteland in education. So if you don't do something radical to that, what will happen? You'll have a bunch of citizens who are uneducated, who are ignorant, who will go on and not get jobs, and also just not be able to function as Republican citizens. And that's the real crisis here. And it's being addressed. It's finally being addressed.
Well, we're not going to talk about ignorant Americans, but there are plenty of stereotypes for the Americans out there. So have you ever heard of brutal Americans? We'll have your best examples just ahead. Well, brutal Americans. I didn't know what this was. I had to ask Peterson. He found this on X, and apparently it was something that I missed out on all weekend. I didn't see all of the fun until earlier today, MP.
So this is one of those great moments in modern media when, The Atlantic, your usual elite liberal publication of some record, puts out an article intending to destroy Donald Trump. And what they said was, and you retweeted this today to our audience, what they said was that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have created a brand new stereotype for America in Europe, because we really care what people in Europe think. But liberals always have. This is from the article. Not the quiet American, not the ugly American, but the brutal American. Anne Applebaum wrote, whatever illusions Europeans ever had about Americans are shattered. So she says this, and they retweet this proudly, and they say, brutal Americans is now what we are because of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. And of course, the natural reaction of the internet over the weekend is to say, thank you for making us sound cool. You really should stop. And a host of pictures of brutal Americans looking cool.
And that is where today's X question came from. So the first one is just my brutal American. It's my birthday buddy. It's Thomas Jefferson from the Capitol building when when we were there, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it wasn't even that long ago. It's amazing. It's a golden age. Man, it's so fun to go to D.C. now. That question you asked Chris earlier, it's totally different. It's all of a sudden a wonderful place to visit again, and can't say enough about it.
Let's go ahead and take a look at Devon's, because he put George Washington up. He said Washington, the dude that dropped a serious amount of bodies back in his day, both literally on the battlefield and figuratively in the political arena. And the man was totally brutal by today's definition. Absolutely. George Washington, I love it. The literally And figuratively, dropping bodies.
Yeah, well, Washington is the father of his country for a reason. Washington is the guy, probably my favorite talk lecture I used to give all the young Claremontsters, now many of whom are in the administration, and he's the role model in many ways. If you don't know that, by the way, you need to go back and just look a little bit, because he is the first brutal American.
I just bought a book from about George Washington this weekend over at a flea market. I can't wait to go through it. You know, it's like the old pages and to look through, so I'm really excited. But Roy is up next, because if you put a picture of Ronald Reagan up, I am going to talk about it. He said, "You may be cool, but you will never be Ronald Reagan with a chainsaw cool." I think that that signifies a lot about America, especially at the time, of the 80s, when everybody thought it was cool still to be an American.
Oh, yeah. And those pictures always, I was just talking about the kitchen cabinet that he had the other day down in Houston. I can smell the California ranch in that picture. And all these guys used to go out to their ranches and just do stuff like that for fun. That's how they recreated and got back down and touched grass with a chainsaw before going back into office. It's a wonderful thing. We need more of it.
And then Lance will finish this out. Our team picked this because he picked yours truly. I'm not a brutal American. I'm just a savage American. There's a big difference. There
is. A savage is better. I'll go with that. We need more Savage memes, by the way, out there. Like Randy Savage memes, more Savage memes. I think in general, this entire little episode, though, it's funny, and a lot of people had some hilarious pictures, but it's also serious because it just shows the power that the mainstream media is losing.
We don't care what Europe thinks about us, and the faster that the left-wing media figures this out, the better off they're going to be. But as much as we love what's happening right now in D.C., in the culture across America, there still is some corruption that we have to look at. And you know what? Sometimes, MP, it still happens even on our side.
Yeah, this is an important point because I'm getting more and more dangerous as every day goes by, because increasingly as I look around, I feel more and more free to do the things that I've always wanted to do in right-leaning media. And a big part of this is just going after corruption wherever it is found. Okay, and this is a very important point because I know our audience understands this. You all know who the Uniparty is, and you decry them. But the problem is that for a long time, people on the right would not go after their own, and there's a certain common sense aspect to that, right? When you're fighting a larger battle, you don't want to go after them. But when you're in a spot in which you've won, in which you control, the branches, you control the executive, and you've had an overwhelming win. As we continue to win over the next few years, an important thing needs to happen. We have to start looking for leaders who are real and start to get rid of fakers, grifters, and what have yous. And there's a lot of those, sadly, within the Republican Party, because ultimately our allegiance is not to the party, right? It's not the Republican Party. It's to actually refounding and restoring America and creating America, an American way of life in the 21st century that's worth living for all Americans. And that means that we have to find the people who are really going to take us there. And so the job of media is going to be not to unnecessarily go after people, but to root out corruption wherever it exists. And the sad reality is that both sides, right, are really one party in Washington, D.C. We need to create the kind of leaders we need by demanding them. And part of demanding them means holding them into account. And so increasingly, I feel freer and freer at Blaze. We're going to do more and more of that as we go on, to praise those who do good and to highlight, people who have not. And it's pathetic when you look at, all these congressmen who make money. Blaze has been big on this for the last year. We had a documentary on it. We've written articles on it. People who make money in Congress, for instance, this is one example, because of their office, and they become rich. That transcends party, right? And so when we're winning, as long as we're winning, it's a great time in public to turn around and go, okay, well, who on our side is doing that? Maybe we should highlight that and say, you better knock it off because we don't appreciate it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Washington, D.C. has been a cesspool for a long time. You live in late Rome. You live in 1930s Chicago, and it's been that way for a long time. You just don't see it because mostly what you see are people throwing feces at each other at a national level in the media about, presidential candidates. But we know how bad it is, right? So part of draining the swamp means that conservative media has to shape up and ship out and go out there and look for who's naughty, who's nice, and hold them to account. I promise you, we're going to be doing a lot more of that in the future.
Late stages of Rome. When I was growing up, I don't know why, but I always just thought, man, I wonder what it would be like to grow up with the Roman Empire and to live in that time, right? Like they had that, the thing is like, oh, what is your Roman Empire, right? When men are like, I think about the Roman Empire like once a day. That was me. I thought about the Roman Empire all the time. But now we live in a place in time where we feel like we can actually make a difference. Donald Trump is out there making this known that he's not going to go through and listen to what the media has to say. He's not going to just sit back and take whatever is the liberal media is throwing at him. No, we're in a place right now where we can actually go through and have concrete wins, like we were talking with the Department of Education. Get rid of that. Well, okay, what's next on the list? What else can we do? Because if we don't do it right now at this point in history, then it doesn't matter if Trump won or if Trump lost. Everything that we have fought for so long will be gone if we just let the grifters keep grifting.
Yeah, and once you start to win, it makes it possible, right? Once you start to actually do these things, then all of a sudden you can look around the ranks. You're not just fighting this existential threat, you know, the enemy. You've taken over, and now it's time to actually build. Now it's time to really clean house. And when you clean house, you have to clean your own house, because if you don't, right, you're not going to achieve the goal. And the audience, the voters are sick and tired of this. They want to see people who are real, you know, on and off the screen. And unfortunately, just human nature being what it is, but also the ecosystem that we've been forced to live under for so long, it's pathetic. I mean, it really is pathetic. And it's not so much even for me a moral question. I mean, it's not my job to judge everyone and let the priests do that. But it's a problem when those failures get in the way of success, when you're tasked to do a public job, right? And that's an enormous problem for the entirety of Washington, D.C. It has to change the way it operates. And in order to do that, you need to reward people who are actually doing good all the way home. And you need to go after people who really are not in egregious ways. Very simple, right? Very simple principle, but one that hasn't been applied for a while and will be now in the coming years.
It will be. And if you want a J.D. Vance or whoever after Donald Trump to make sure that this movement actually goes through and lasts, you can't be as bad as the other side. You have to give the voters a reason to continue to vote for you. And that is laying out a clear path and having distinguished yourself from the left and actually upholding the values that you want on the right. It's
Amen to
pretty
that.
common sense.
And I mean, look, we're doing it. I mean, it's moving forward. It's amazing what's going on. We're going to bring it every day. It's win after win. But we need bigger, badder, stronger. We can't stop. We can't stop.
Leadership on the right. We'll continue to break it all down. Thanks for watching tonight, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.